The Flash was a film that Warner Brothers Discovery needed to make a boatload of money to be considered successful, and release weekend failed to impress, but things are looking abysmal for this movie because it is officially the DCEU's worst box office drop ever, and putting it behind only Morbius as the highest box office drop for any comic book movie that debuted at number 1. I have a few different things that I want to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon or a supporter via YouTube memberships. So there is a lot of bad news to cover surrounding this movie, but let's start off with the Friday numbers. Box office tragedy. The Flash falls 81% on Friday, won't make $100 million this weekend or possibly next. Huge write-down for the studio. Now this of course is a movie that they needed to do numbers. They needed this to make at least $500 million, and they felt very confident in that, judging by the way that they were talking about the movie before it released. They were saying it was going to be the best superhero movie ever released, and they were so proud of it. And it really did seem like they were very excited and proud of this movie, just judging by the fact that they refused to cancel it after 7 delays and after all of the scrutiny that Ezra Miller has gone through on social media. Most companies at that point would have been like, all right, let's just shelve it. Maybe in a few years we can come back to it, or you know what, maybe we'll never come back to it. But they decided to continue forward with this film, and it looks like it is going to lose them a lot of cash. It says The Flash fell 81%, shocking, and made just $4.5 million. Another $9 million this weekend will bring it to just $85 million over 2 weekends, and The Flash won't get near $100 million until next weekend at least. Now, these were the Friday numbers. 81% is a massive drop, but we now know the weekend numbers are not any better. It's not like on Saturday, they had this surge with this film. That didn't happen. The Flash's box office drop just broke a painful DCEU movie record, so at least it's making history. Might not be for good reasons, but it still is. The Flash's second weekend box office drop is projected to bring the DCEU a brand new unwanted record for this divisive multiverse story. It says after another disastrous box office update, The Flash has broken the most unwanted DCEU record, as well as potentially taking a painful comic book movie record in the process. Having debuted with a $55 million domestic haul against higher projections and much higher hopes, The Flash is being called a legitimate box office flop, adding a sour note to the end of the DCEU. It says the DCEU traditionally doesn't have a strong second weekend at the box office, with an average drop of 59.4% on weekend 1, which is dragged down somewhat by the performances of Wonder Woman in 2017 and Aquaman in 2018 as the highest performances in weekend 2. And yeah, I mean, we have seen just with superhero movies in general, they do typically start off relatively strong, and by the second weekend their numbers do tank quite a bit, because a lot of the people who are mega fans go weekend 1 and they go and see it. They're so excited for it, and that hype is very high. But at the same time, a average drop of 59.4% isn't all that bad when you look at just films in general, because I've had to talk recently about movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, all these films that have done, 65%. We've seen 70%. I remember Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness and Thor: Love and Thunder were both upwards of 70%. But it says that the nature of box office reporting, of course, highlights exactly how important early performance is, and it's only very rarely that movies actually pick up in performance over the second weekend. And right now, The Flash is tracking so poorly, it is another negative strike against the film. Now, as you can see, we've got, Man of Steel 64%, Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice 68%, Suicide Squad 67%. And then the highest percent on this list is actually 2021's The Suicide Squad. These are pretty massive drops, but you can see that there were movies that did much better, like Wonder Woman 43%, Shazam, the first one was only a 53%, Birds of Prey was actually 48%, but you have to look at Birds of Prey's numbers compared to the others. I mean, the opening for Birds of Prey was only 33 million versus something like Suicide Squad in 2016 that was 180 million, or Dawn of Justice, which was 166 million. But yeah, I mean, these numbers are not looking good for The Flash. It says, according to Variety, The Flash's box office dropped by 73%, eclipsing every other DCEU movie released so far. It even says on top of that, according to Box Mojo's figures, a 73% drop puts The Flash behind only Morbius as the highest box office drop for any comic book movie that debuted at number 1, and even that topped the charts for a second weekend running, which The Flash will not. They needed to make at least $500 million on this film for it to be considered at least a win, not even, massively successful or anything, and it doesn't look like it is going to hit the numbers they need it to. And this is honestly a little bit sad to me because the trailers for this movie were so good, even though I didn't have a lot of hype for it because, of course, Ezra and the fact that they removed Henry Cavill's cameo. There were a lot of issues leading up to it, right? The trailers for this film actually made it look very good, and my hype was actually a little bit high for it by the end and by release. And then the movie came out and it was just a massive flop. It's like they didn't actually know what people wanted at the end of the day. And so we got this mediocre movie. And it did disappoint many people, not just me. I mean, the scores for this film are pretty decent, except for the critic ones. The audience scores are pretty decent. Verified is at an 84, all audience is at an 80, the all critics is at a 66, and the top critic is at a 52. I definitely think an 80 is extremely generous. I do feel like it deserves a little bit more than a 52, though. I would agree with the all critics at a 66, which is rare that I agree with critics, but I do think it was like a 6 out of 10. One of the only saving graces to this movie was Michael Keaton. Seeing him back as Batman was fantastic. His dialogue was great. His suit looked awesome. He was just all around a perfect addition. And I also really liked Michael Shannon as Zod, but both of these performances don't boost it over a 6. It wasn't the worst film I've ever seen, but it definitely wasn't the best, and honestly, it did deserve these massive drop-offs, right? They continue to use characters that, people either have no hype for, like this new Sasha Calle Supergirl, or they use actors that people are very upset with, like Ezra, and then they push out really great people, like Henry Cavill, and I know Gal Gadot has, had a little bit more of a mixed time in the spotlight, primarily because of Wonder Woman 1984, but I still have really loved her Wonder Woman. If 84 didn't exist, her run as the character would still be perfect in my opinion, and I would still like to see her in the DCEU, but I mean, they have definitely made decisions that fans have not enjoyed. And I don't think that this movie can come back. I don't think it's going to see this magic surge. And it is going to stay one of the biggest disappointments, not just even in the DCEU, but in comics in general, with comic book movies. I mean, this is breaking records, and not for positive reasons, but yes, as you can see, this box office drop is not looking good for The Flash. It's not going to make them money. The scores have been pretty solid, but I gotta be honest, it's because a lot aren't being added simply because more people are not going to the theaters to see it. But yes, it is not doing very good right now, and it is breaking very negative records. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this and of course found it important and informative, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.